We're going to talk about exponent rules here. Specifically, we're going to focus on the product rule and the quotient rule. Before we get into all that, we're going to do some review on the zero rule and the negative rule for exponents. So if you recall from the previous lesson, we talked about how the zero rule impacts exponents. So whenever we have a zero in the exponent, the term raised to that power becomes 1. So as you can see in the example here of the rule, a to the 0 power is 1. Then we have two examples below it. X to the 0 power, well, that will also just be 1. However, this is only really tricky when you have a coefficient or other variables involved with a 0 exponent. So in this situation, the 3 is not being raised to the 0 power. Only y is being raised to the 0 power. So this is really just 3 times 1, which is just 3. Then over here, the negative power. Whenever you have a negative exponent, that requires you to flip or to move the negative power from the bottom to the top or from the top to the bottom of your fraction. So in this case, we have x to the negative second power. That could be rewritten as 1 over x to the second power, where it becomes positive. And then again, when it becomes tricky is when you have these coefficients in front. So 5y to the negative third, that 5 is not being raised to the negative third, only y is. So that'll be 5 over y to the positive third power, like that. Now, let's get into the product and the quotient rule. So the product rule is where we are going to be multiplying powers with like bases. So if we take a to the m power times a to the n power, we could really rewrite that as a to the m plus n power. So we're just going to add the two exponents together. So if we look at the example below, we have x squared times x to the fifth. Now, based on the product rule above, we should just be rewriting this as x to the 2 plus 5 power, which would simplify to x to the 7th. But why is it rewritten that way? Well, let me show you. If we write out x squared as x times x, then we have x to the 5th, which is x times x times x times x times x. And then when we multiply all that together, all of these have a 1 in the exponent. And if we add up all of those ones, that gives us x to the 7th power, which is why we can just use this rule up here at the top. Now, looking at the quotient rule. So the quotient rule is when we are dividing powers with like bases. When we are dividing powers with like bases, we subtract the exponents. So if we have a to the m divided by a to the n, that'll become a to the m minus n power. So in our example here, we have y to the 7th divided by y to the 4th. Following the rule, that will be y to the 7 minus 4 power, which will give us y to the 3rd. Now, again, if we write this out, I'm going to change colors. So we have y 7 times 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then on the bottom, we have y times itself 4 times. There we go. Then we can cancel these out. So we can cancel out these y's, these y's, these y's, and these y's here, which leaves us with these 3 y's here. So when we write out our final answer there, we will get y to the 3rd, just like we did when we subtracted.